Starting the output failed. Make sure. Well, it said failed, but it looks like it started. Can anyone see?
I'm on my phone, so I can't tell.
I'm checking it.
I just got a notification from YouTube saying you're online.
Okay, someone in the chat post something if we're on. I think we're on.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I am going to operate under the assumption that we're on. Okay. How's everyone doing?
Doing well.
Good.
Thanks everyone for allowing me this do-over after the last one crashed and burned. Hey, Clash's Pride, good to see you.
Yeah,
So
it just went boom.
It's for the best. Yeah. I missed the last one.
Just promise you're going to keep the quantum physics mumbo jumbo to a minimum.
Yeah, I told him we weren't going to discuss any quantum voodoo dynamics.
Yeah. I know it's your passion, but people have left because they just cannot understand what the heck you and Shane are talking about.
I'm sorry about that.
What happened to that last stream? Asked JC Armitage. What didn't happen to that last stream? First of all, my Windows machine blue screened. I tried to get it back up and running. I started the stream again. YouTube wouldn't show the stream. It finally showed that little extra 5-minute stream in the middle, like on Sunday morning or something like that. Anyway, it crashed again. And I said, heck with it, I'm just going to go into Linux and do it. And Linux wanted to update everything. Discord would not let me in until it updated. But the latest package wasn't in the Ubuntu repositories yet, so I had to uninstall it and install it through Snap. And, yeah.
Okay.
I think your mic is going through one sound channel or something. I can fix that. A problem I can fix. I like those. Let's see. I should be able to...
Speaking of which, real quickly, how's my end going? Because like I said, I'm doing this from my phone.
Mono. Okay, is that better? Yeah.
Yeah, and I asked, how's it going on my end? Can everyone hear me clearly and all that?
I'm hearing you clearly. It's perfect. It sounds like normal. So you got a good mic on your phone.
No background noise, like nothing.
No.
Yeah.
No, your voice is clear, everything.
Yeah, because like I said, my dog is here with me because I work at a dog daycare, so I brought him with me.
Aw.
Yeah.
My daughter would love a job like that. Okay, good to know, Clash.
Oh, what did Clash say?
Oh, he's saying it's good now. My my microphone not being in only one channel. It's in both now. Like it was showing up only on the left channel or something like that.
Yeah. Well, one benefit about doing closing shift at the place I work at is you get an hour break instead of a half hour, and you don't got to clock out for it, so it's paid for.
Cool.
So hopefully I should be able to stay on for like 30 minutes or so, possibly longer.
That's nice.
Yeah. I'm just in my car right now in the parking lot, so. Yeah.
Okay, SKM wants to know if anyone has a New Year's resolution. Personally, I think those are just so arbitrary. I didn't really do them. You know.
My New Year's resolution is to make a New Year's resolution and actually follow through with it.
I did that years ago. I made a New Year's resolution not to make any more New Year's resolutions.
You can't lose.
Yep.
I don't know if I'll make it a resolution, but I'll definitely try to read more. There was a time I was reading a lot, then I stopped. It's one of those things that it's good to keep to stay educated.
Well, before we started, we were talking about things that were closer to the moon landings than today. Weren't you saying Austin Powers 4th? came out closer to the last moon landing than to today? Why wait for the new year when you can just
Sorry,
improve
sorry
now?
about
Yep,
that.
my sentiments exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Fourth.
Austin Powers came out in 1997, so that would be about the halfway point
So what else came out
between
in
the between
97?
Apollo 17 and now.
Yeah. You think it's possible that
So,
we'll go into another lockdown? I mean, I haven't gotten any information on how many deaths there actually have been from the Omicron variant. As of like 2 weeks ago, it was none, according to the WHO. I think a few have started because, I mean, everything kills someone sooner or later. But, I mean, it's so prevalent and there are so few deaths and hospitalizations for it. I mean, just going back to what I
yeah,
said when all this started, one big possibility for how this would all shake out is that it would end up evolving into just another cold virus, and it looks like that's
yeah,
what's happening.
Oh yeah, and it's
yeah,
funny
that's
because
really
people,
the
people. I was about to say, people treat viruses like it's like, oh, it killed someone. That means it's super deadly. Guess what? A common cold will kill you too in some circumstances.
Yeah.
If I recall
yeah.
correctly, that's
Right
how
now,
Jim
it's
Henson died.
right now. It look from the data I've seen, it looks like the Omicron variant is less severe than seasonal flu, which if you use seasonal flu as your threshold for panic, then there's no
Hmm.
justification for the panic. And also, people, the only way this pandemic is going to end is if it evolves into something more benign. So trying to lock down this particular variant may actually be counterproductive because it may turn
Sounds
out
like
to
you
be a
want the
self.
variant to take over.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, possibly. Depending on how severe it is, that might actually be a good thing because it could be a self-proliferating vaccine. I'm serious about this.
Well, and yeah, that would just drive the evolution of another variant. What's that? What's that? What's after Omicron? Omicron Phi? Is Phi after Omicron?
I'm
Whatever the
Let me
Phi
double check.
variant, would theoretically be more transmissible and less severe once everyone gets an
Pi.
immunity to Omicron. And so, what?
Pi.
Phi.
Pi is after
I like
Omicron.
I like pie.
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon,
Mm.
zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, psi, Omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, epsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Yeah, it's pi. Yeah, I think the flu is a good metric. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we know that we weren't freaking out about seasonal flu, and maybe you could make the case that we should have been, but
Yeah,
we don't.
at,
So
at least a
we,
greater amount of concern getting more people getting the yearly vaccines.
right. I mean, the flu vaccine has never been mandatory. It's always been that kind of thing that maybe I should get it, but a lot of people blow it off. And nobody
I
really
Well,
remember
it
when
is
pays
like
anybody.
they freak out. They freak out about how many people are killed by guns. More people are killed by the flu than guns.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
remember when H1N1 first came out, and that particular version of the flu was a little bit more dangerous than the standard version of the flu, but we didn't see this whole lockdown and no one's allowed to go in and out of Mexico where it came from. All they did was they would have these PSAs every now and then saying, now remember, wash your hands thoroughly. If you sneeze, do it in your sleeve and stuff like that.
And what are they not saying now because they're focused on the masks and social distancing, and so what's happened? People are neglecting things like washing their hands and sneezing into their sleeve and all that. So the
I think
normal
the reason
precautions against transmission are not being taken.
In my personal opinion, I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me. The whole thing, social distancing and all these rules, they came for one reason and one reason only, and that was because it came during the 2020 election. And politicians, because a big criticism Trump was getting during that time was, oh, Trump's not doing anything. So the Democrats came in and they're like, okay, we'll do something. We're gonna do all these rules.
Well, the biggest act of hypocrisy is just how they're treating vaccination. Because it's so obvious that this is more about giving Pfizer and Moderna more money, forcing people to give them money, than it is about actually common sense uh, public health policy.
Yeah, and the I
But
yeah,
what
and the
else is
irony
new?
and the irony is, and we pointed this out multiple times, is that it creates sort of a reverse psychology effect. Normally people are like, I don't really want to get this particular virus. Maybe I should get vaccinated. But when the government says you have to get vaccinated, or else, people are like, why? Why? Why are you forcing me to do this? Huh? Why does the government want me to get vaccinated so badly?
And SKM says Austria is back in lockdown. And I think I saw on Tom Roosendahl's Twitter, and I'm trying to remember what country is he in. Is he in the Netherlands? The guy who created Blender. But anyway, he said that they were locking down again. I forget what country he's in. But
Anyway,
it's like Finland or the Netherlands, somewhere like that.
Over here in Portugal, we are not, I wouldn't say locking down, but at the beginning of January there will be a 1 week period where basically, if you can work from home, you have to work from home.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sort of like
I
try
think
to
the reason why
mitigate,
Europe and a lot of places, and
the
especially
spreading of the
Australia, are
virus
so
after Christmas. People get together.
I think the reason why Europe and Australia are so, harsh and all that, I think I know why. And some people are bringing this up. It's because they don't have the right to keep and bear arms,
Yeah.
because trust me, there are politicians that if they had their way, they would definitely, turn America into kind of like what Australia is going through. But they don't do that because they know that, listen, if we do that, we're gonna have hundreds, if not thousands, of angry citizens with their guns storming, our Capitol buildings, demanding to lift the lockdown areas.
Well, and Viva Fry has been doing vlogs on, what's been going on in Canada with the lockdowns and everything, despite the fact that they have a pretty robust constitution. I don't think it's as robust as ours, but they have pretty strong protections on things like, freedom of speech and stuff like that. And they're just breaking that right and left. There was like, one preacher, I think it was, that he was protesting the lockdowns and the mandatory vaccines and things like that. And, they arrested him and everything and said he wasn't allowed to say that. And he fought it in court. And so the court sided with him. Well, okay, you can speak, but when you do, you have to give this disclaimer that what you're saying is not, backed up by, medical science and things like that, which is not true, first of all. But, forced speech is also a violation of free speech. So he appealed that, and I think he won. I think he doesn't have to give that disclaimer now. But he had to go through like a couple of appeals to do that.
In all honesty, all these excuses that people have, for all these limitations, and it's ironic it's coming from the left, because the excuses they're using, they're the exact same excuses that many politicians did when they were infringing our freedoms during Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, we're at war. We got to protect our national security. If you blab your mouth, the terrorists might hear it and use that against us.
Or like thinking back to the 70s and 80s with the Cold War and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was the right doing all of this stuff using, the Russians and everything else as their justification. And the left was all gung-ho for, free speech and everything else. And now it's flipped. It's completely flipped.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the ACLU has lost all of my respect with the way that they're
absolutely
the woke pro-censorship crowd.
The beautiful thing is that a lot of people are like, yeah, but the ACLU was founded by communists, so what's new? Well, historically, even though, yes, they were a communist organization, they defended anti-communist people, like religious leaders,
One of my favorite pictures is from, I think, back in like late 60s, early 70s, something like that. But it was a Klan protest, and there was such opposition to the Klan that, people were starting to respond violently to them. And so the police went out to protect the Klan, to protect their, right to free speech, because as terrible as they are, they still have the right to free speech. And this particular photo was of a Klan member being protected by a black cop. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, mad
Clan
respect
member
for
was an
Bob.
asshole, but the cop has my respect.
Yeah. Kind of that also reminds me. That also reminds me of that one incident where the Westboro Baptist Church, was going to picket, a gay soldier that had died recently, and ironically, one person that showed up, to counter protest the WBC was a confirmed Klan member, and he was standing alongside these blacks and other people, and they asked him why he was showing up, and he's like, "Because I was a soldier, and I'm not going to let these people disrespect a fallen vet."
Yeah, JC, I don't know about Australia anymore because he's talking about quarantine camps and you hear stuff like that and you don't know what to believe. But like the stories that police in Australia, if you were driving in your own car with the windows up, but you didn't have a mask, the police would stop you, pull you from your car, and beat you. I wouldn't believe that, except that there's video of it.
Yep.
And it's crazy.
Oh yeah, there's tons of horror stories like that. I don't know. I've heard I've heard from some people, and I've seen videos that they're still doing it in the UK. There are cases of people literally just going outside just to pick up their mail, and if a police officer walks by, they're like, "Why aren't you wearing your mask?" Well, I'm only out here for a few minutes. I'm just getting my mail. Nope, you got to wear a mask every time you go outside, and if they refuse, they get cited.
I know SKM, the one I'm thinking is way earlier than 2010. Something like that might have happened in 2010 again. And you didn't really have the KKK by 2010. Like the mid
Oh yeah.
90s, the KKK since then has never been any kind of significant force.
Yet people like the Anti-Defamation League and all that think that they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, 90%
Well,
of the time
in one sense they are, because there are a whole bunch of just insignificant, tiny little groups of barely 100 people who say that they're the Klan and they get together for a barbecue every now and then. But there's no organization. They're all claiming to be the real Klan, and none of them have any numbers. And
Oh yeah. And not to mention, there's quite a few, groups that claim to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Then you go up and you find out they're just an online group, and it's really more of a joke organization.
Yeah, darn it.
yeah,
Why can't I find a legit clan group in my neighborhood?
Yeah,
because there really aren't any anymore.
yeah,
Uh, oh, don't tell the left that.
yeah, yeah. When all the violence seems to be coming from the left. Speaking of which, you mentioned guns earlier. Did you hear what happened in Michigan with that one school shooter? They're trying to punish the parents now too.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, they're like, oh well, your kid was showing signs of antisocial and violent behavior, and yet you bought him a gun and all that. And it's like, people, everyone should know this. Just because a kid shows an interest in things like violence and antisocial behavior does not mean they are going to be the next Columbine shooters.
Yeah, there are no red flags.
Yeah, I remember there was actually a memo done by the FBI, and they were trying to discover, okay, what can we find out, which is the best indicator to predict, who's going to be a mass shooter. And at the end of the day, they found out that you really can't.
Well, I don't want. I certainly would never defend red flag laws, but I'm telling you from personal experience with two separate incidents that there are definitely red flags about killers and their personality that you can pick up on from
So
your
the picture
interactions
the
with them.
picture I was talking about of the KKK rally and the black cop was in Austin, Texas in 1983. I don't know if I've got it on my phone. I don't know if it's going to show up on the webcam, but that's the photo I'm talking about. It won't get in focus, I think, but
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I'd like to show some of these some woke liberals that photo and ask them what they think.
yep.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, Shane. Like, I agree with you. I think it's just more of an excuse, for red flag laws. You know what also is the dumbest thing I've heard criticism of, about the case in Michigan, is people are saying, oh yeah, and they're also paying for their son's attorney. Oh yeah, because yeah, he's not entitled to legal defense.
Yep.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
people.
they tried to do that with Kyle Rittenhouse when he had, I think it was an Indiegogo campaign to raise
Yeah,
money for his legal fund. They shut him down.
it's like people just cannot come seem to grasp that. Listen, the difference between a just society and a banana republic, where where you can be guilty just because you don't talk to the police, is that no matter what kind of evil act you did, even if there's kind of clear evidence that you committed the crime, you still get a chance to defend yourself in court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Kyle Rittenhouse is a perfect example. Why? Because, when a lot of these things came out in the trial, most of which were not new, there were a few things that I didn't know that came out in trial, but most of them had been public for a year, but you wouldn't know that, if you were just watching the news. And then all these people on the left who have been anti, Kyle Rittenhouse are watching the trial going, wait a minute, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. It was what? You know, and they ended up changing
Even
their
the Young
minds.
Turks of all people, even with the exception of Chank, many members of the Young Turks flat out came out and said, yeah, after we saw the video of Rittenhouse, we kind of now agree. Yeah, I mean, we still don't agree that he should have been there, but yeah, he had every right to
I
defend himself.
I'm not going to give them much credit for that because they were pretending like this latest thing that just came out as the result of an investigation shows. It's like, no, that information has been there for a year. You just didn't
But
look.
yeah, they didn't even watch the raw
Yeah, they
footage.
were
It
they,
was
they
it,
were
it,
trying
wa-
to
it
they were trying to give themselves cover. Like how
yeah,
could we have known? We had no way of knowing.
Mm.
no, they were extremely negligent. As reporters,
Mm-hmm.
they have a responsibility to actually look into the information themselves. And yeah, they don't get I mean, they get a modicum of credit for actually changing their mind, but uh, almost none at all.
It's one thing that
Yeah.
surprised me about the Kyle Rittenhouse case was for a long time I thought that Binger was being a cruel, stupid district attorney, but then I learned that it turns out that well, he technically wasn't the official district attorney. The district attorney of Kenosha
Mm-hmm.
technically was in charge, but he handed it down because he to Binger because he knew he didn't have a case, and he basically just threw
Well,
Binger under the bus.
Well, because you have the main district attorney. I forget his name. It was Michael something, and then under him you have the deputy DA, and they just kept passing it down. And Binger and Kraus are two of like I think 20 some assistant DAs that they were orders like you have to prosecute this, but I mean, a big high profile case like that, if there was any chance of them, getting a win, the main DA would have been there, leading
Oh
the
yeah.
charge and all that. They knew they had a cheese eater of a case. They
Yeah.
knew from the start there was no way they were going to win.
Oh yeah. Even if he was found guilty.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been immediately overturned on appeal.
Oh yeah, and if that didn't happen, although I will say, Shane, even though I am perfectly fine, even though I am perfectly happy and glad Kyle was found not guilty and innocent, it would have been funny, if he were found guilty, and while the appeals going through, there's a bunch of people outside, the prison where he's being held, holding free Kyle Rittenhouse, and they're being peaceful about it. They're just chanting, and the left is like, "Oh no, people are surrounding the prison! They're gonna break it! Look how violent they are!"
Nate the lawyer has a two-part video series on the lies that the press was telling and is still telling about Kyle Rittenhouse. And I mean, he brings the receipts. Like one of them is, oh, well, he was there, a white guy with an AR 15. If you had an underage black person with an AR 15, they're instantly getting, pounced on by the cops and everything else. And then he just cut to, and this might not have been the Kyle Rittenhouse case. This might have been one of the others, maybe Ahmaud Arbery or something like that. But it was a father and a daughter. And I can't tell how young the daughter is, maybe 15, 16, something like that. But they both have AR-15s, outside, at the protest.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a real shame how biased our news media is. and that even fact checkers and stuff are just who do you trust? Nobody. There's no organization
Yeah.
that you can trust on
Really
this sort of
stupid.
thing.
What's really stupid is after the verdict, like so many people, including Al Sharpton, were like, "Oh, this only proves racism and all that." Yeah,
Hmm.
and I like how, yeah, and I like how many people are pointing out. You do realize the three people Kyle shot were white, and Kyle himself is half Latino on one side of his family.
Yeah,
Hmm.
which news outlet was it that specifically said that he shot 3 black people?
Lots of them.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
there
Yeah.
was one in
Nate the lawyer.
particular.
Nate the lawyer shows those too. Yeah. Watch those.
Oh, that's just
Mm.
so stupid. He was the least white person involved in that incident.
yeah.
Yeah. Except for Jump Kick Man. Jump Kick Man was black.
Oh yeah, there was Jump Kick Man. That's
And
right.
it also came out. It also came out that the prosecution knew who Jump Kick Man was and withheld that from the defense.
Oh yeah.
There was so much prosecutorial misconduct going on.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Jump kick
they
man.
should prosecute Binger for that,
They
or at
probably
least try
won't,
to
though.
disbar him. No, they won't.
Yeah. Well, and to play the devil's advocate here, like we just mentioned before, Binger isn't 100% responsible either. Like you said, the main district attorney was like, we have to prosecute Kyle Rittenhouse, but I don't want to do it because I know I'm going to lose and I don't want to look bad for my next election. So let's
Yeah,
pass it on
but
until
Binger is still responsible for the things he did. He still suborned perjury.
yeah.
He still lied
Yeah,
about the gun. He still did all those things.
Not to mention,
He
you,
still
you
he
can
still
use
he
that
was still
argument.
was the one who tried to use Kyle Rittenhouse's post arrest silence against him. All the things that made the judge just end up yelling at him. That was Binger. That was all Binger.
The fact that
I
Binger
mean,
was handed a shit case to begin with is a good reason to excuse why he was making so many bad arguments, but it absolutely does not excuse any prosecutorial misconduct.
yeah.
That's inexcusable.
I
Yeah,
honestly think
how many people are actually falling for the crossing state lines thing? Because I don't think anyone in New York is, because they cross state lines between New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut all the time. Around here, you have Fort Mill and Rock Hill in South Carolina, which are basically a part of Charlotte, and you just go across there. I know there are lots of places like that.
oh yeah,
Where there's effectively, legally they're two different cities, but effectively it's the same metro area where there's a state line in the middle of it.
yeah, like if I recall correctly,
I, on the other hand,
isn't there that one
I, on
town
the other
that
hand, I'm over 100 miles from the nearest state line.
I was about to say, isn't there like that one town that legally, politically speaking, it's in Colorado, but geographically speaking, it's literally on the border of 4 different states.
Oh, that's a Navajo reservation, and there's a place where you can lay out spread eagled and each limb be in a different state. It's the only place in the country where you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But even when you're talking about not just state borders but country borders, there are a lot of photos of the border between Belgium and the Netherlands that's marked out on the pavement, and it goes like right in the middle of cafes. Right down it even goes through like someone's front door.
Yeah. Aren't borders just fun?
Yeah, Clash, the word on Binger is that's just par for the course for him. He does that in every trial. I'm not sure what SKM is talking about. He says going back to violence, people who rail on violent media, look who was on the receiving end of the violence. Not sure what, if he's talking about movies or what.
I don't know. It is kind of, I mean,
You'll have to clarify for us, SKM. Yeah, Tennessee and Virginia. And the Florida Panhandle is basically Alabama. It has a lot more in common with Alabama than the rest of Florida.
And another thing too, and I've even, and and this is something I really wish more people would bring up because this is really important, is like, listen, even if, let's say, for the sake of argument, Kyle did cross the border with the rifle, we have a little thing called the Second Amendment, which is the supreme law of the
Mm-hmm.
land.
Yeah, state borders basically mean nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are cases where crossing a state line could make a crime federal instead of state and some legal thing. But as far as just normal real life is concerned, state borders are nothing. People cross them all the time. There's no
Oh
border
yeah.
crossing. There's no customs. There's nothing like that.
Yeah. The only
Yeah,
thing you
and most
encounter when you cross
states,
the state border is a toll.
yeah, and most states, even the really lefty liberal ones, don't even have they they know that they're getting into gray territory with their gun restrictions, so they'll even make allowances for people driving through or who aren't permanent residents in that state to still carry guns in their car. I think Illinois is one of those.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
the
I
gun laws
know.
are kind of ridiculous because a lot of them, like there might be a state that says your gun has to be in your trunk, another says it's and cannot be in your glove box, another says it has to be in your glove box and cannot be your trunk. So you have to stop your car right on the border and move it from the glove box to the trunk. There are
I mean,
places where
I
you
mean,
have to
another good
do that.
example of this. Actually, another good example of this, Shane, that I hear about is Canada, and I've actually heard that Canada will let you bring in guns that are normally illegal in Canada if you're like on a hunting trip to Alaska and you're deciding to drive, because going through airport security with a gun ahead of time is a nightmare. So,
Hmm.
I looked it up out of curiosity. Really, all you got to do is you got to contact the Canadian Border Patrol and authorities ahead of time and say, "Hey, listen, I'm going on a hunting trip I'm going on a hunting trip, in Alaska or parts of Canada, here's my gun," and they got to examine it and they'll say, okay, but it's got to be unloaded and all that, and that's just it.
Yeah, they probably want it like locked in the trunk, unloaded with the ammo separate and all that.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's what I've read, and as long as you do that, and like I said, you have, the paper showing, listen, I'm just an American hunter, on my way to Alaska or Northern Canada, they'll be like, okay, we won't charge you with, possession of the firearm.
Whereas around here, it's not that unusual for people to have, a handgun in that like center console between the front seats, in your car. You
Yeah,
know, lots of people do that. That's how they
oh
openly
yeah,
carry. So.
exactly.
Because, I mean, if you're in an area where there are guns, a lot of this stuff just ends up seeming really silly, you know?
Oh yeah.
The St. Louis is on the border between Missouri and Illinois. And I think the same is also true of Kansas City. It's like right on a border.
Speaking of St. Louis, I'm going there tomorrow for the Christmas weekend.
Marvel
Well,
at
I
the
mean,
Arch for
we were
us.
talking about Kenosha, and Chicago. Basically, it's the same metropolitan area that straddles the border.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can get on a bus in Antioch and get off in Kenosha, without having to like transfer or anything. It's the same metro area.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, going back to what I said about the U.S. Constitution, one thing I like about that video, that quickie did about Buck versus Bill is, because every time I bring up, the supreme law of the land is superior, a lot of people, especially legal lawyers, will say, yeah, but the Supreme Court has ruled that it's okay for states, to make some exceptions here and there. To which I want to say, and the Supreme Court also said that it was okay and constitutional to have slaves, discriminate, and sterilize, quote unquote, undesirables.
And they never overturned the forced sterilization. That's the
Oh
important
yeah,
part about Buck v. Bell.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Supreme Court has done some good stuff, but they've also done a lot of bad stuff. And just like the Bible, you can pick and choose, Supreme Court cases that fit your agenda. Because,
Yeah,
like I said,
we were talking about Pfizer a bit ago. This might have been before we actually went live, but the whole thing about Kelo v. New London, if you remember that case, where they said, yeah, it's perfectly fine for
hang on, guys.
them to take people's property without compensation, despite the Fifth Amendment. They basically reworded the First Amendment. And the whole point of that was so that Kaiser could have that land to build a headquarters on it, and then they never built a headquarters, but that's what it was all about. So yeah, Kilo v. New London. Look that one up. Maybe I'll do a quickie on that one too. The Little Pink House.
Sorry, I went quiet for a little bit. My the receptionist was wanted to make sure I was okay. Yeah, I told him I'm fine. Speaking of my work, I'm not gonna say her name, but we've got a new trainee and all that. And during a break, she was ranting about how she doesn't like Elon Musk.
I
Yeah,
mean,
she's
it's
like,
fine. There are things about Elon Musk that aren't that great, but
well, the thing she was saying is like, it's like, oh, he's not a self-made man. He only made money because his parents own an emerald mine. And I didn't say anything because I don't want to cause anything at work. And I'm just thinking, oh yeah, that emerald mine was just magically there, and Elon Musk's parents just happened to magically. There was like a being that said, "Mr. Musk, this is your property. You have it now."
People will always
yeah.
be salty at seeing somebody else's success. Doesn't matter that Elon Musk works like 90 hours a week, and is a
Yeah.
genius. Yeah, he's
Same
got
thing. Same
billions of
thing.
dollars.
Same thing with Jeff Bezos. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot to hate about Jeff Bezos. What's very ironic about Jeff Bezos is that so many people say, he's a terrible person and all that, but I noticed that this didn't happen until after the government kept going after Amazon.
Yep. Oh, I remember when all that happened because basically anyone in the country could buy anything they wanted to on Amazon without paying state sales tax. And the states always railed about that, and they tried charging sales tax, and the courts kept shutting them down. And so, the federal government had to pass, it was actually called the Amazon tax.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I mean, I
that's,
think I think I think my new coworker. I think the reason why she doesn't like that guys like that, and why she says, they're not self-made men. I think it's just because they don't understand how wealth and all that is created. They're unfortunately a lot of the people where it's like, oh, money is finite, and it all gets controlled, ignoring that money actually isn't finite. It gets generated based on wealth creation.
yeah, not
Right?
like the
People
great and
don't.
the good people, like Brianna Wu, who was given something like $400,000 from Dadams.
It's that myth of the zero sum game. They think that because somebody has accrued a lot of, like, even if dollars were constant, the amount of dollars in the economy were constant, that wouldn't mean that somebody earning a lot of dollars has made anybody worse off because they're
Yeah.
generating wealth. And so every other dollar becomes more worth more.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
a
and
zero sum fallacy, wage fund theory, all that sort of stuff. They're just stuck in that mentality.
and a perfect
Yeah.
example about
You'd
why
be
about the way,
astounded.
and a perfectly
You'd
good
be
example was
astounded how common that assumption is. If you went down the street and you asked somebody, true or false, does somebody me having more money necessarily mean other people have less money? Or if you said wealth, even somebody has more wealth, does that mean somebody else has less wealth? And I bet 80% of the population would say yes. They wouldn't even think
oh
about it.
yeah.
They just say, yeah, of course that's what that
Yep.
Oh, by the way, Shane, another going back to Amazon, another funny thing I heard about was I saw this one amateur comedian one time, and this amateur comedian was on YouTube, I think, or something, and he came from a common blue collar working class background, and he did a lot of jobs before and all that. And he said it's like, and I was hearing all these complaints, about Amazon and all that, and it's like, oh, it's terrible. You gotta work hard. You gotta speed, to get the deliveries there on time and all that. It's a terrible place. And I'm just thinking, people, have you never worked in a delivery service or a warehouse before? Because it's not just
means. Well,
Amazon that does.
the thing is, like, so why do they work there? Well, because it's the best job that they can get right
Oh yeah,
now.
Yeah. It's the best of all the available alternatives. And who are you to take that away from them?
And another thing that this one coworker, was ranting about was, it's like how come it's like, they won't chip in a little bit of extra money to give their employees a living wage. Like when they lose $1,000, they think of it as a big deal. It's like, well, That's because you're not thinking in the grand scheme of things. A lot of people are like, so, well, if only they, did you know if they were willing to spend 10 extra dollars on an employee, people would be happy. It's like, yeah, but the company employs hundreds of thousands of employees. So multiply 10 by hundreds of thousands. It adds up.
Or consider
what else
this,
people
because
don't
they talk
understand?
about like Elon Musk, gets paid so much more than his employees. But consider, if you think about all of this as a deal that Musk is making with each employee, look at even an employee's starting salary, and then look at how much Elon Musk makes per employee. Look at how much he makes, all total, include from all the stocks and everything, divided by the number of employees. And I think you'll be, amazed at how small it is. I think it's like $1.50 a year,
Oh yeah,
as opposed to,
No, I don't
$10 an
think it's quite
hour.
that low, but
No, it's pretty low.
I'm sure
It's
it
pretty
is
low.
pretty low. But I mean, if you think about it, if Elon Musk has 300 billion dollars, well, there's 300 million people in the United States, so that would be $1,000 for every
Well, I'm
person in the
talking
United
about
States.
what he makes. I'm talking about what he makes in a given year, like what he made
Like
in,
his salary, not his net worth.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What he made in income and stock options and everything over 2020 versus how many divide that by how many employees.
oh yeah, and
The
Yeah.
other thing people
and I've
don't
been
get is they really don't understand billionaires' motivations, because I think they just all assume that billionaires, they're just really greedy. They love themselves. They want to live in the lap of luxury. Well, if they did that, that they would just retire and spend
Yep.
the rest of their
oh
lives on an
yeah,
island. I mean,
yeah,
they understand that wealth can only buy so much happiness. No, they're motivated by other things. Bill
oh yeah.
Gates was motivated
A
by
perfectly good example
elect.
is look at Trump. Is look at Trump's family. If Trump, was a greedy man who only cared, he wanted to live, in a mansion, and that's all he ever wanted. He could retire right now. Like his family has more than enough money to live, to live that luxury lifestyle for the next 100 years. But he doesn't. He keeps working.
No, they want to change the world. That's fundamentally what all the richest people in the world want to do. They want to change the world in some way. Sometimes their visions might be misguided, but they're not out for themselves by and large, because the guys who want to make a lot of money for themselves retire well before they make $1 billion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Bill Gates wants to cure malaria. He wants to uh,
Hmm.
do what he can, the most good that he can with his
Yeah.
$1 billion
And
any way that he sees.
here's another common thing. It's another common thing we see with a lot of, self-made millionaires. The origin of their company started because there was one small minute that normally people wouldn't worry about. Normally people don't think about issue they had. And they're like, you know what? I'm tired of this. Someone needs to do something about it.
And on the other side of your equation, there, Fourth, you have people like George Soros and Michael Bloomberg who want to use their wealth to push socialism, as
Oh
much as they
yeah, yeah.
can.
They have a. Those people are an example of a misguided sense, but in their own mind, they're doing the right thing. They're motivated by their sense of, well,
Right.
I think the world
Yeah.
should be like this. You know, that's what people don't get.
Yeah. And it's also like Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is a perfectly good example that I like to point out to people, that just because a guy, is a college professor does not mean he's smart. So many people like that. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're just a guy on the internet." Noam Chomsky, he's a college professor. Yeah, he's a college professor of linguistics.
Well, and then you look at people like Richard Wolff. Then the guy's talking about all this stuff about the workers, this, the workers, that. He's never been a worker a day in his life. He
Oh yeah.
had his Ivy League education handed to him. He's always had some kind of work with the government or whatever, as opposed to, you have
I
Walter
can't stand that
Williams.
guy. He makes me
Yeah.
sick. Wolf. Uh,
Mhm.
Yeah.
his
What's
whole
But
the
you
way that he
compare that,
talks
but
slowly, and he repeats the dumbest talking points that he can to just try to get an
Hmm.
emotional response out of his listeners. Like they don't need you
Oh
if
yeah.
you're not profitable.
Like
Ugh.
like that
But
one
then
video he did.
you compare that to people like Walter Williams, who was born in the slums of Philadelphia and had to
And Thomas
earn it all
Sowell.
on his own. What's that?
And Thomas Sowell, he grew up. His dad, I
Yep.
think, died shortly after he was born, and then his mother died, and he
Hmm.
lived in relatives, and he lived in Harlem, a really poor part of Harlem.
Well, he originally was in the Jim Crow South. I think it was around Gastonia, actually, just down the road from me. But yeah. So being raised by a single mother, and she ended up moving him to Harlem because she just wanted to get away from the Jim Crow South and wanted to go to somewhere better, but she couldn't afford to just go anywhere, because they didn't have the money to, go to some place with, real expensive housing. So Harlem was their best option. So she moved him there.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's
I
good.
wanted to mention earlier, while on the topic of uh, with authority figures that know Jack, there's one economist, I think it's Paul Krugman,
Yeah.
uh, and yeah,
You think Keynesians don't
he
like
won
Paul
a Nobel
Krugman
Prize
anymore?
in economics,
Well,
and
he
he's
won
pretty
the
well.
Nobel Prize. He won the Nobel Prize for his work on international trade, where he was basically confirming, David Ricardo's idea about the benefits of international free trade. But, when it comes to, going outside that field, he doesn't understand how the same thing also applies, to people, working in an economy, and workers and businesses and consumers and everywhere else. He just has to, put all that aside and push his socialism.
Mm.
And it is amazing how many times in his New York Times article he says things and espouses all sorts of concepts as though they were economic fact when they are contradicted by his own economics textbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
And speaking
Nobel
of
Prize Committee is such
speaking
a
of
joke.
authority figures not knowing
Yeah,
shit about
hang on a second, Lee. Skeleton Skewer, that was George Papandreou, the student of Wolf's, who tried to he became, I think it was prime minister, I think is the position in Greece, and he was putting everything he learned from Wolf into action, destroyed Greece's economy, and ended up going back on that and imposing so-called austerity, which is a terrible word for it. It's just there to denigrate it, but that was what turned Greece around.
Mhm. Anyway, what I was gonna say is a lot of speaking of authority figures that don't know what they're talking about, I thought of a cool idea that I might do if I ever get the opportunity because I need to hire an artist. I might do anti Dr. Seuss style stories because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good books with Dr. Seuss, but there's some like the Lorax which are really just wrong and they make
Oh,
you face palm.
oh God,
Check,
I
check
hate the
out
Lorax.
Tabby Wasa for that, because I think her artwork, would be very well suited for that sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know how regular she takes it, but like every now and then she'll, put out a call, if she gets, behind on bills or whatever, just gets in a position where she needs money and she'll take on more work then. So
Yeah.
you can always
Yeah,
reach
I
out
mean
to her and see.
yeah, I would like to make my own list, which is called top 10 children's stories that actually teach you bad messages, and two of of Dr. Seuss's books are on it. One is The Lorax and the other one is Green Eggs and Ham. Because basically the moral of the message of Green Eggs and Ham is you have to pressure and pursue someone they until they try it, and you can't say you don't like something unless you try it, when the reality is that's not always true. Actually,
Yeah.
the new Green Eggs and Ham TV show in the very first episode even brought up that issue, where Sam I Am is like, wait a minute, how can you say you don't like green eggs and ham if you never tried it? And he's like, yeah, well, I've never tried moose droppings before, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't like those,
Yep.
I'd
which is
say that
true.
certain stories like the Butter Battle book or the Lorax had an overt political message. I don't know about Green Eggs and Ham. I think that was just more of a kid's story to try to get kids
Well,
to
it
try
was
new
about,
food.
yeah, it was about trying new things, going outside your comfort zone. But yeah, the pressuring on him was
Yeah,
kind of weird.
it's like, yeah, because
Well, that's
that's
like
the one thing that
humor.
when, yeah, And I mean, that's the thing too. The guy in that story is telling Sam, it's like, Sam, leave me alone. And Sam's like, no, you gotta try it. Oh, you didn't want it the first time? Well, what if we tried it with a fox in a box? No. What about a house with a mouse? No.
What does
Like,
any
leave
of
the
that have to do with whether he'll like green eggs and ham?
yeah. It's like leave him
I mean, he's
alone,
being silly, I
Sam.
get it, but yeah, it's one
Yeah.
of those fridge moments where you go, wait a minute. Although I still think one of the most brilliant books ever written is And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry
Yeah.
Street.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
because
awesome.
you mentioned that how it
Mhm.
makes fun of about how the kids like what I see that same boring horse every day. Screw that! I'm gonna tell my dad
Well,
I saw this on
it's like every day his dad says to him, "Hey, what'd you see on the way home?" And he says, nothing but a plain horse and wagon on Mulberry Street. And that's what he says every day. And he's like, I'm sick of it. I'm going to come up with all of these things, all of these incredible things that I saw and all of the stuff. And then when he finally gets home, he wimps out and he just says he saw a horse and wagon on Mulberry Street.
yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah, and it's a
That
bad
was his
message that the
first
Lorax
one.
tree teaches. It basically says, don't try to strive, to fulfill a dream or make something new because you'll destroy everything. And it's like, and how come nobody ever brings up the point that it's like, people, the problem with the Wunsler wasn't that he was chopping down the trees, it's that he was forgetting to plant new ones so he could sustain himself.
Yeah, he was just being stupid. Either that or it was government land and he got a sweetheart deal with the Forestry Service or
Yeah.
something, because that happens. But if you look at clear cutting, almost nobody does clear cutting on their own property. Look
Oh
at
yeah.
the paper companies and how well they manage their forests as opposed to the Forestry Service. They do a much better job.
Yeah,
Oh
you
yeah.
have to believe that the Onceler was just the most ridiculously stupid and incompetent businessman on the planet to completely deforest his entire supply chain. It's
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
actually saw
Well,
ridiculous.
I mean, they did a similar thing on an episode of Tiny Toons, which what was the fans called it? The Emmy grab, certain episodes, because mostly that was a really good show. Every now and then they'd have an Emmy grab where they'd try to do this amazing political message, and there was this one about the evils of businessmen and things like that. And Montana Max was like stripping down all of the forest so he can make wooden spoons. And it was like it would take a giant tree and run it through and cut away all the wood, one big tree to make one single spoon. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Who in his
yeah, how
right
wait
mind would do that instead of making, 5,000 spoons out of a tree? You just make one. Who would waste all that wood?
And
funny thing
you
though,
could
so many
actually
people say this is how evil business is. Yeah, look how much it applies to government.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you could
Yeah.
actually tweak the Lorax very modestly
Yeah.
to make it an excellent example of the tragedy of the commons.
Oh,
Oh
If
yeah.
it
yeah.
Yeah.
included
Yeah.
all the people
Good,
who
very good
wanted
point.
the forest. Yeah, if you had all the people saying, "Well, this forest belongs to us all," and you had multiple people cutting down trees to make, what's it called, the product he made. Anyways, if they were all doing
It
that,
was like
and
it was like
and
that
you had
good
one
kind of,
guy who just wanted to keep his land, then that would shut and yeah.
if I recall correctly, it was like some sort of fleece that he developed that basically the best way to describe it, it's like, the towel from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It could do so many stuff.
The Sneed,
Like it
that was it. Yeah.
Which would make it a very valuable. And wasn't he doing something stupid like hoarding seeds so that no one could plant anymore or something like that? And then
I
yeah.
don't think that was
I
ever
remember at the
explicitly
end like he
mentioned.
got like the one last seed where he could finally plant a new tree and get them all going again or something. It's
Yeah,
just
that was
Yeah.
in the book. He gave the kid the seed.
yeah. I didn't see the movie. I didn't even go there.
Yeah. Fun fact: there
Yeah.
was a
Well, the
movie,
movie
not
gets
the
even worse
CGI
with the
movie, not the CGI movie. There was originally a made-for-TV movie, like in the '70s, and they actually had to censor it because there was a line, because there was a line, where the fish are leaving because the water's all polluted, and there's like things aren't any better up in Lake Erie, and many people around the Lake Erie area were saying, people, guys, Dr. Seuss, or whoever owns the thing, Lake Erie's been cleaned since the 1990s.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the movie they had this whole horrible subplot that there was this rich businessman who would go around bullying people, and they didn't touch on the fact that, you know, if 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 this was a society where people had their own property rights, then you could, arrest that man for threatening and harassing the people in Sneedville. Um, but they didn't get into that.
Wasn't
But I
there
mean,
also a
you
different?
could have a story where a corporation is your enemy and do it well, if you do it right,
Yeah.
especially if it's something where not that, the CEO is a villain who twirls his mustache, but just because they've set up, this big machine where, no one person is doing something evil, but, the sum total of it, ends up being destructive.
Yeah, and another thing too is if you're gonna write a corporation as a villain, stop making it a whole of well, we gotta make money. Because fun
Mm-hmm.
fact, I've actually heard one of the reasons why they made, the secret journals, behind the Weyland Yutani Corporation, and they mentioned the real reason why Weyland Yutani was obsessed with the xenomorphs was they wanted to use it to improve humankind. I think the real reason was because they were getting a ton of mail from people saying it's like, listen, when is Weyland Yutani gonna realize you can't sell these aliens to the military? When are they gonna realize that? And like it's destroying their colonies. They're losing all this money just trying to keep one of them. Why do they keep going at them? And I think it's just someone trying to say, well, actually, they're not trying to make money. They're trying to improve humankind. Yeah,
Hello?
Weyland Yutani, and the Umbrella Corporation from Resident Evil are two perfect examples of how not to write an evil corporation trope.
I thought I heard a new voice in the background. Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no one new in the chat. It's coming through
Yeah.
on someone's mic.
Yeah, especially the Umbrella Corporation. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna develop these viruses that turn humans into zombies and monsters. Okay, how's that gonna make you money?
Step 1, create virus. Step 2, Step 3, profit.
Yeah. I think that actually applies more. I think that joke applies more to like I said, like people who are trying to write evil corporations as a thing. It's like, okay, we're gonna make the villain an evil corporation. Okay, why is it doing what it's doing? Because it wants money. Okay, well, if it's a bad corporation, why are people doing business with it? Because it's like,
Okay,
oh yeah,
$2 from Darius Thurman. We got a super chat here. Thank you so much, Darius. He wants to know, is Avatar an anti-business movie? And I don't know because I have not seen it, because I could tell from the start that was going to be a load of crap. And why am I not dancing? I should be dancing on the
well, it was
thing.
nice seeing you guys, but my break's over in a few minutes, so I gotta go.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Well, you guys have a good Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that. Yeah. Yeah. It's supposed to put his chat up on there and show the little animation of me dancing, and it's not doing it, and I don't know why.
Does the animation require anything special?
Well, no, it's all done through Streamlabs, and it should just be set up.
What was the content of that super chat?
The question about Avatar, is it an anti-business movie?
Yeah, kind of. The person funding the operation was this businessman played by the guy who played Phoebe's brother in Friends, who funded this whole military operation to go and take over this planet so that they could mine this superconductor.
I will tell you exactly when and how. I would tell you exactly when and how I knew it was going to be a bad movie, and that was when everyone said it was a good music, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Now it's all cut off. I don't know.
I can't remember.
But it was when everyone said, "Oh, that was a great movie," and it was like, what was great about it? And the only thing they mentioned were the special effects. That's how I knew it was going to be a bad movie.
Yeah, I've seen that movie. The only thing I remember are the characters, and even then, only some of them.
What did you think of Rogue One?
I never saw Rogue One. I have the riff tracks of it. I just haven't sat down and watched it yet. But yeah, that's the only way I've been able to sit through the Disney movies is riff tracks.
Rogue One was really good, actually, and I heard
Yeah,
that
I would
Solo was
say that Rogue
also
One
really
was
good.
pretty damn good.
Oh, really?
I heard that I heard that
Yeah,
Solo was
yeah.
also really
All the
good,
other
but I haven't
Star
seen that
Wars,
one yet.
the all the other Star Wars sequels, and basically anything that came out since Return of the Jedi, and even I would say Return of the Jedi wasn't even that good. But um, yeah, I would say that Rogue One would be the third best Star Wars movie of all the Star Wars movies. So it would
The
be
third best?
a
That's
new
a high claim.
a New Hope and or Empire Strikes Back are the top two. I'd say A New Hope was the best one, and then Rogue One would be number three on my list.
What was that rank again?
So number one's A New Hope, number two's Empire Strikes Back, number three would be Rogue One, uh, number four maybe the Solo, and then number five Return of the Jedi, and then there's
Okay.
all those crap sequels.
And we got another 5 from Darius Thurman, which for some reason the overlay was messed up even more. But he said Umbrella had some pretty eugenic, left wing, and environmentalist themes of saving Earth by killing the human race and restarting. I mean, there are people who want to do that.
Yeah. Well, some people I don't
Isn't
understand.
that like that
Like,
guy at that one guy who heads the World Economic Forum? Wasn't he saying something like that?
I'm not familiar with that at all. But this mentality that somehow something is inherently bad about the human race is so disturbingly prevalent. Um, I hate the people who, or well, I hate the idea that Mars, for example, a lifeless planet, even among people who acknowledge Mars is probably possibly a lifeless planet, will say that there's still some sort of environmental moral highness to preserving Mars in the way it is rather than letting humans colonize it.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm muted. I'm sorry, I didn't see I was muted. He's asking if we're going to do more 2v2s. That was Dapperton doing those, so that's a question for him, not me. I was just participating.
So you guys want to hear about my decentralized fact checking idea?
Sure, sure. Tell us how to do fact checking right.
Okay, so this is a little bit complex, so bear with me. So I'm thinking of um, now. This would be
So
great if
long as it
somebody else
doesn't
could do
involve,
this too. So
uh,
don't what?
so long as it doesn't involve any quantum mechanics, I think we're good.
No. This is a really sociological phenomenon. Um, Pretty simple to understand. So this isn't like my idea. I would really like it if somebody took this idea and ran with it. I just want this idea out there. But the idea is that you would have this organization. The organization would have a trademark logo on it, and people could use that logo on any statement of fact that they make uh, to bolster that claim by putting money on it. If you could prove that that claim was false, then you would be awarded the money that they are putting up with registering their use of that logo for that fact claim. And then the way that uh, the statement of fact would be evaluated, um, that's a really tricky part. And I think the best way to go about doing it is that you would have a panel of arbiters who would evaluate the claim, and the weight that each arbiter has in the way that they vote would depend on how well they steelman the arguments of both parties involved in the claim. And how well they steelman that would, of course, be evaluated by the claimants in the claim. So let's say you had Fox News, they put out some sort of fact about tax or claim about taxes or something, and said if anybody can prove us wrong, they will win $10,000. Here's the deposit amount that you have to put forward to challenge the claim, and it would be through this organization, which we're using their logo here. And so when that claim is challenged, the challenger would pay a small deposit to challenge the claim. That would cover compensation for the arbiter's time who engage in it, and our arbiters would listen and moderate the debate between the defendant of the claim and the challenger. Then they each would write a summary of the arguments that were presented by both sides. Those people would get the summaries that were written to represent their position and rank them in order of most accurate to least accurate. And that ranking would be used to weight the votes of the arbiters who ultimately decide which side won.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the because one of the big concepts of the wisdom of crowds, which is what you're trying to implement here, is they all have to have some skin in the game. And I'm kind of wondering how you do that, to avoid just the, what you see in Twitter, just the pile-ons and the, the massive, downvote campaigns on YouTube and stuff like that.
Well, the better you do as an arbiter in representing challengers and defendants' arguments, the more you would be compensated. Now, how you align that ultimate voting decision uh, with their evaluation, I don't think that there would be any conflict of interest to prevent an arbiter from just going with what they feel is genuinely true. I think most people are motivated to reward people who are more sensible and speaking truth anyway. So I wonder how that would actually play out.
I don't know. Give me 1 second. I'm going to test the super chat thing and see if it's fixed. And it's because I can do test super chat and no, see it just Why is it not showing that? All right, go ahead and continue. I'm going to try and troubleshoot this.
Well, it would certainly create a powerful motivation for the arbiters involved to evaluate or to really listen to both sides of the argument, right? And it would also be a very powerful indicator of how confident a person is in making their claims, to actually put their money where their mouth is and say, you can rely on this. We're offering $10,000 if anybody can prove us wrong, and you only have to pay a $100 deposit. That would be a very strong indicator, much stronger than any other fact checker seal of approval on the truth of those claims. And it would also motivate a lot of people to go through and try to find instances of bad claims being bolstered by the use of that logo.
Well, I got the word never in. Why is it not showing the rest of it? All right. Zirius11, I'm not sure how he pronounces that. He said, never played Resident Evil and don't want to. I loved that game back in the day. I loved playing it. How does the plot get from an evil corporation to a giant goth lady? Politics sucks. Let's talk games. I haven't played it in a long time, so I couldn't really, I don't remember all the details and everything.
I never played the Resident Evil game. I don't do horror, so.
I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun, but
Just horror and my problem with horror is not the jump scares or any like that. That's the easy part. It's the feeling that you get while playing horror games, while watching horror movies, that something's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know what, and this feeling permeates throughout the entire movie, and I really hate that.
I just think
But when I
the
do
whole
when I do
horror
watch a
genre is
movie,
kind of
I can
easy.
like sit through it, and then it's like, okay, I guess it wasn't that bad. But yeah, I don't like the experience.
I want to see more movies and media like like The Martian, or rational fiction, where
Yeah.
the characters actually make sensible decisions and you actually have um, what's it called? The problem is that it's very, very difficult to write a character that's smarter than the writer, if not impossible. I mean, you might be able to write a character that thinks faster than the writer because
Hmm.
the writer has all the time in the world to consider what that character's decisions would be. But yeah, it's a real shame because it's really hard to relate to a character that's supposed to be smart, that's always making these really dumb, nonsensical decisions, and that happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is that Hollywood writers think they're a lot smarter than they are. And I think if
Yeah,
you
that
if you
that
just
is a
have some
problem.
humility, realizing like, hey, I'm writing for a doctor. I don't know much about being a doctor. I'm gonna go study up on it. I'm gonna go, hire a doctor to be a consultant on it and check over the script and let me know how things go. Yeah, and they seem to do that all right, with things like medicine. But when it comes to a lot of other stuff about science and economics, they just kind of
Or
assume they know it
history.
all and stick in one, yeah, or history, yeah, and they put in one fallacy after another.
I
Yeah.
saw, I forget who it was. There's this YouTuber that I watch, and he said he was once asked to work on a movie, to work as a history sort of consultant, like check all the accuracy and stuff. And like he never got anyone, never had anyone go up to him and ask, "Hey, is this appropriate? Hey, is this accurate? Hey, can we do this?" A handful of times he said, that's not very accurate, and they were like, I mean, yeah, sure, but it's like it's alright, it's for the movie. And there was one time, the only time someone came up to him to ask him something, that was to ask, hey, these flags, should the people in the front hold them, should the people in the back hold them? And he was like, those are flags for horses. That was the one time. And yeah, the only reason the movie production team hired them was so they could say, yeah, we got an actual historian here, so this is accurate, when it's not at all.
Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey had really good consultants on the real to get the realism of space travel right. I really liked that. One thing I can't stand is when I see a space movie and they show a ship approaching a planet and the ship is pointed towards the planet with its engines on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be pointed away. You're trying to slow down. You don't need to speed up going down into a gravity well.
Well, not even away, just in the opposite direction of orbit.
Look, what was
Right,
that
right. And
movie?
Maybe they want to crash into the planet, but they're just very lucky.
What was that?
you got to
I
get there
remember it
that
had.
much faster.
I remember it had Tim Robbins in it because this scene involved Tim Robbins and how his character died because they couldn't get to him because they're out in space, they're over Mars, and his fellow astronaut is trying to get to him, and she's using an MMU, and so she hits the thruster on the MMU, But even though it's
And
not
then
under a
you-
constant thrust, man maneuvering unit, they put on the where you have the little jet things on the rocket things on your spacesuit,
Oh yeah.
so you can yeah.
Yeah.
So so it goes down to like 50%,
Oh,
and
know
so
which
she
one this
stops
was.
there. Yeah, and it's just totally not how it works. It's like they think those things
Yeah.
are like driving cars, and the longer and then you have to stop. No, when you stop,
then
you're
he
using
was-
more fuel.
Yeah, and then he was just outside the range of the grappling hook. Yeah, that was it wasn't Mission to Mars. It was like the Red Planet, or it's one of those two. Mission to
I don't
Mars
know.
or Red Planet. I can't remember which one's
Whichever
which.
one has Tim Robbins in it, that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm going to try this again and see what happens. This is another test, but just... Ah, there we go.
And then
Okay.
there's all the problems
I think
with
I
the
fixed
movie Gravity.
I mean, I have to say I liked Gravity despite the problems.
Yeah, I'll admit that too. Gravity was entertaining. Not entertaining enough for me to see it more than once, though. There was too much, maybe that's because I play too much Kerbal Space Program, but it was, there were good and bad things about that. They had a good amount of drama and them trying to figure the protagonist trying to figure out her way through problems there, but yeah, and so many writers just get orbital mechanics so wrong. I mean, even Andy Weir,
Well,
as good as a writer he is, he got the orbital mechanics wrong in The Martian.
well, the thing about orbital mechanics is not only is it difficult to get right, when you do get it, if you do it right, it'll be very confusing to the audience.
That's true.
Because if you're on, let's say you're on a space station, and there's another space station ahead in your orbit, and you just need to get the character there, instead of going on a treatise about it,
Right.
you just have him accelerate the rocket engines and get there. When in reality, what he would do is slow down
to speed up.
and then go into a higher orbit, or is it a lower orbit? Lower orbit. And then that would speed up, his period, and then he would actually speed up to slow down and get there. And that would be so confusing.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But they
things
could,
like that I can
put in a
forgive.
scene- They could put in a scene that explains that. I think that would be simple enough if they showed during the astronaut training montage or whatever. In order to catch up, you actually have to fire away. But that might be unnecessary and too nuanced.
Yeah, it would just weigh things down. And, the audience is supposed to be thinking about the plot and the characters and everything else, unless
Maybe-
that's...
Maybe if that sentence tied to the plot somehow.
Yeah, it would have to be tied to what's going on and important to... Otherwise, don't put it in there. I mean, that's why I'm okay
Yeah.
with, like, if you have like a movie or something with Moonbase and they're communicating with Earth in real time, even though technically that would be faster than light, I would be fine with that, because waiting 3 seconds to get the reply would just break up the drama and just mess up the timing of the scene, which is really important. So,
But
Yeah, I mean that you can. It doesn't even violate movie making or whatever, because you can presume that they're editing between clips and cutting out the time that they are waiting. So
yeah.
that can be fine.
what's that one rule in, like, I think that's from theater, that if you have a gun in Act 1 or Scene 1, someone has to shoot it.
Yeah,
By
Chekhov's
accident.
gun. Anton Chekhov said that if there's a gun hanging on the wall in Act 1, then it should be used by Act 3. Which the idea is you don't just put anything in there that's superfluous. Everything should have a purpose. It shouldn't just be something random put in there. Even if you don't actually use the gun, it would have to be like, if it's important to a character, like, someone fought in a war and that gun was what he used and that was really important to him, character wise or something like that. And then you have Chekhov's corollary, which is a lot of people think is equally important, if not more so, which is if you use a gun in Act 3, show it hanging on the wall in Act 1. In other words, don't just pull out anything as a Deus Ex Machina. It's like, oh, I've got this problem. Well, all of a sudden I have this gun that you've never seen before. Like, wait a minute, where did that come from? Just show it somehow earlier just to let us know, hey, there's a gun in play here.
I forgot what I read, but apparently Greek, ancient Greek plays were basically the term where Deus Ex Machina comes from, because you would have a play, and then at the end there'd be a problem that one could solve, and so God would come down, and the actor would be lowered by ropes, and he would have the final word. This is what happens.
And that's what it is. Deus Ex Machina means God from a machine, and the machine was the apparatus that would lower the character playing the God into the theater.
Yep.
Onto the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't stand those ex machina moments because after one of them, you just the writer's just gonna pull a rabbit out of the hat and save them, and so it destroys that sense of tension because that they're willing to just break the rules of probability or of science just to make this fit. Where I think a really good writer, the clues are there. They're very subtle. It might be very difficult to see the solution, but then the character's still going to find the solution and it's going to be believable. That makes a good story.
I mean, unless you do it right, like, what was that Star Trek episode called? I think it was the Squire of Gotham, not the Squire of Gotham. It may have been the Squire. I don't remember. The one where they were basically the plaything of an alien god, and this alien god wouldn't. And then at the end, it turns out the alien god was a kid, and his parents show up, and his parents put a stop to everything and let them go. That you could say was a Deus Ex Machina, but it was also kind of this twist ending, to show you what was really going on.
That's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, but I guess not really.
Well, not really, because the whole point was they were setting up the wizard to be this, god character who could solve everything, and then he wasn't. And he kind of just, did his best with everything, you did all of this yourself. And in the end, couldn't even get Dorothy back to Kansas because he doesn't know how to operate a hot air balloon. And so then Glenda says, you've been able to get home all the time. And for some reason, Dorothy just gets wide-eyed and says, really? Instead of going, then why did you make me go through all of this? You could have just told me as soon as the slippers were on that all I had to do was click them 3 times.
I was watching that, The Wizard of Oz recently, and I realized there's that scene when Dorothy first arrives in Oz, and Glenda floats down in the bubble, and she appears to her, and the first thing she asks her is, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Dorothy's all like, what? I'm not a witch at all. The witches are old and ugly. And then Glenda goes, only old witches are ugly. So what? Is Dorothy
No,
ugly?
only bad witches are ugly, good witches are beautiful. Sorry, so then why did she have to ask her if she was a good witch or a bad witch?
Is she saying Dorothy's half ugly?
It's like, I don't know. You're a generous 6, I think. Oh God, it's kind of like in the old George Reeves. It's just like in the old George Reeves Superman, and I think this was there, in the radio show as well. How did it start? It always started, up there in the sky, look, it's a bird. No, it's a plane. No, it's Superman. Okay, why were the first 2 people so excited?
And why did they say, he can leap over tall buildings in a single bound? Well, yeah, he can fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Superman is just the worst idea for a superhero. It's just, he's got all the powers. He's got freeze.
He was too
breath.
powerful. That's why they had to come up
Yeah.
with kryptonite.
Yeah.
Because he was just too powerful. It was just too easy for him to do
But
stuff.
lead blocks kryptonite. Okay, and he's supposedly super, super strong. So wearing a lead suit wouldn't slow
Yeah.
him down like at all. So why isn't he wearing the lead suit all the time to protect him against his only weakness?
Yeah, I mean, he could just make a lead exoskeleton, or a battle mech or something like that to go around in as Superman.
Yeah, put some, some.
Or even get,
light
I know
bulbs
it's
in there.
crossing universes, but if he could cross over to a universe and get Tony Stark to build him an Iron Man-esque suit out of lead,
Right, and have lights in there that mimic sunlight. So even if he's exposed to the light of a red sun, well, then all he has to do is turn on his visor
Yeah.
and lights. And
How is that supposed to work? Because first of all, why does it work indoors? And second, would it work if you had like full spectrum studio lights on him?
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
the powers of Earth's yellow sun. Earth's sun is not yellow.
Yeah,
It's
actually
6,000 kelvins. That's not yellow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yellow would be more like 3,000 kelvins.
Yeah, and he's supposedly so fast that he can catch a bullet that he shoots from a gun himself. But he'll get into these fist fights or something in like real time. It's all like, dude, you could just defeat your enemy instantly.
Well, no. Superman 1. This is what I always complained about. The part where he spins around backwards, turning the Earth backwards, and it turns back time instead of, destroying the Earth and,
Everything
But I was told one time when I was complaining about it that wasn't really what's going on. This sounds like a fanboy retcon to me. What was happening was he was going so fast that he was going into a reverse time dilation and wound time backwards that way. So he was going so fast that he was traveling backwards in time. Well, okay. Except that the whole reason he had to do that, the whole reason why Lois Lane died, was that he couldn't get from New Jersey to Metropolis in 10 minutes.
Right.
And now he's able to zip around the Earth faster than the speed of light.
Yeah. And then the character did something that we didn't think was possible before, and the audience goes wild.
Wait, I never watched
It's kind of
much
like
Superman, but
Yeah. So Superman can time travel now. So add time travel to his abilities.
so I never watched much Superman. Did you say you couldn't get from New Jersey to where in 10 minutes?
Because he had to, I'm forgetting the details. Lex Luthor had set it up where he had to be there to, I think, save a bus full of people. But that took too much time, so he couldn't get back to Metropolis to save Lois Lane.
Yeah, there were like two ballistic missiles or something being launched, and he had to stop them both, and then he didn't have enough time to save Lois Lane, and it just...
Where is Metropolis?
It's kind of like how...
Metropolis is like I think it's like a stand-in for New York. I don't think they exactly said where it is, but if he can...
are right next to each other.
But if he can go around the world faster than the speed of light, which is something... The speed of light, I think, is something like 7.5 orbits in a second or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If he can go faster than that, it doesn't matter where Metropolis is. It could be in freaking Fiji and he still could have made it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't like the opposite side of the world, it's like, okay, I guess even Superman isn't that fast. But then the moment you start, defying the laws of physics, it's okay, it's out the window. But even just without that, New York and New Jersey
kind of reminds me of how the Force is used in the Star Wars movie.
Superman would be able to, at least be fast enough.
Well, especially in the Disney trilogy, where the Force can do whatever they want to at the time, but then all of a sudden it becomes inconvenient. So it's like I think both of these scenes were in The Rise of Skywalker, where you have Rey practicing the Force and she's levitating. Okay, so she can levitate, which I always thought should have been possible for a powerful enough Jedi to levitate and fly and everything else. Except that later on in the movie, there's that where they're all trying to jump around on the ships, with Kylo Ren, and she's not able to do it. Why can't she just levitate then? If she
She
can
has to be in
levitate,
a
if she can
very
fly.
concentrated meditative state. Like the problem with the Force is that I think every movie they would come out with some new thing about the Force, regardless of, and it would just completely spoil all of your predictive power about what the limitations are for a Jedi, and so it's kind of pointless to watch because they're just going to pull a rabbit out of the hat to have the Force do whatever they need to have done at that moment.
Well, and I think a lot of it was stuff like, because in the original trilogy, even at the end of Empire with that lightsaber fight with Darth Vader, it's clear that Luke Skywalker is still pretty much a novice at the Force. And if Darth Vader wanted to, he would have been dead in 2 seconds. Vader didn't want to kill him because he's his son and he wanted to join him. That's the only reason he survived that fight. And, finally, then he just got annoyed and cut his hand off. We could have done that at the beginning. And so it's not until really the third movie where he could be called a proper Jedi. And then Rey does it in like the first third of her first movie with no training.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, okay, we just saw that Darth Vader has the power to pry pipes off the wall and big pieces of equipment and throw them at Luke using only the Force. And then Luke climbs out onto the scaffolding and does not want to join forces with his dad, so he jumps off. Now, why didn't Darth Vader just go, "Oh, no, you don't," and levitate him back up using the Force?
I think it was more of a character thing. He realized that, no matter what he did, he couldn't, at least at that moment, get Luke to join him. So he would work a little more long term. I think if you look at that whole fight and how it all comes out, I think all of the complaints people have about that fight, about how they were, doing things wrong in the fight, makes sense considering what the characters wanted in the situation that they're in. Luke is in this tug of war between his fear, which makes him want to run away from Darth Vader, and his anger, which makes him want to kill him. And I mean, watch what Luke does with that in mind. And his stuff makes a lot of sense. Vader at the start, he's just kind of standing there, just kind of casually holding the lightsaber and just deflecting all his blows like they're nothing. His body language is he isn't really taking this seriously because he knows Luke is no match for him. And then it's only at the end, when he finally gets angry at him. So I think if you consider what's going on with the characters in that scene, you'll see it's really quite brilliant.
Well, the problem there is that, you said that he didn't levitate Luke back up onto the scaffolding because he didn't want to, he didn't want to force Luke to.
Well, I think no, because that was a pretty long conversation they had. And I think at that point, when he would rather jump off ostensibly to his death rather than, join Darth Vader, I think Vader realized that, okay, no matter what I say right now, he's not going to join me, so I need to work more on that more long term. I think that was what was going through his mind.
Okay, fair enough. In which case, well, maybe it would have been better for Vader to show that he cares about his son by levitating him back up and then walking away.
But when you consider that Vader is someone who has lost a lot of compassion, in his journey to the dark side.
It wasn't so much about losing compassion. He needed Luke to help kill the Emperor, right?
Well, was that even his goal at the time?
No compassion.
Because that might not, I don't even think that was his goal until the third movie. But was it his plot? Was it his plot all the time to kill the Emperor? I didn't really get that impression.
Maybe not. He that's what he offered Luke when he asked him to join him. Now, whether or not he was being honest, who knows?
I mean, what he offered Luke was actually kind of vague, so it could be interpreted in a number
Well, he
of
said,
ways.
"Together we can destroy the Emperor and rule the galaxy."
I thought he said destroy the Empire
the Emperor.
and put a
That we
new
can
one in their
destroy
place
the
with the two
Emperor.
of them leading it. And I'll
Yeah.
have to watch that scene again. You may be right. Yeah, SKM says if Ray had already been combat trained, then you could say, okay, she's incorporating what she's learning from the Force into her combat techniques. But the thing is, she never learns good combat techniques. What is that thing with like holding the lightsaber so the blade's out here and you're trying to fight like this? What's that all about? I'm not an expert on combat and I know how dumb that is.
Well, the thing I hated most about the sequel trilogy was definitely and just the whole thing of Palpatine coming back. It's just okay. From
They
the
undid everything that was achieved in the original trilogy.
Right. The opening scroll hits and boom, right off the bat, it just ruins the entire series. And if Palpatine survived being thrown into the core of the Death Star, why should we believe he didn't survive the battle on Exegol? Like, there can be no satisfying resolution to the films.
Zerius11 has another super chat for $5. Thank you so much. He says, this may not be current canon. Yeah, because I think Disney said, yeah, that whole extended universe, we're going to ignore that. That's not canon anymore. But in The Force Unleashed, I don't know if that's a book or what, which was pre-Rogue One, I think, Vader was trying to kill the Emperor with Starkiller. So maybe it was. Maybe secretly his plot all the time was try to figure out how to kill the Emperor and take his place. That may be the case. I didn't get that impression from watching it, but it might be. Oh, it's a video game. Okay. Who was the dumbest person you debunked? Well, it's whoever I'm debunking at the time. That's kind of my approach to it. I don't know. It's hard to say who's dumb and who's just being manipulative. I don't think Richard Wolff is dumb. I think he's manipulative.
What if you are debunking someone smart, but they said something dumb in one point?
Yeah, some people are dumb in that they should know better, and the perfect example of that is Thunderfoot.
Yeah. Yeah, Thunderfoot is not dumb as far as IQ goes. But there are a lot of things that he should know about that he doesn't. That's, I think, really because of arrogance.
Yeah, he's so arrogant that he doesn't, critically think about his own ideas, and so he'll make just such mind-numbingly bad arguments and stupid assessments, like his whole thing about using using sodium to augment jet propellant. It's a terrible idea. Where are you going to get the sodium from? You're going to have to release all this chlorine.
Yeah, poison the atmosphere with chlorine. That's a yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless he plans on getting the sodium through like nuclear fusion or something.
SKM, another thing that bugged me about Star Wars was how blasters work. The power requirements would be enough to power a city block minimum. And why do they have recoil? And why do you need to cock a blaster?
I don't have any problem with blasters, and no, they wouldn't have any recoil. But I mean, presumably, you might have some sort of. If you put as much energy into a laser beam as you put into a bullet, then it's going to do as much damage as a bullet would. I have no problem with the blasters. It's the fact that you can watch the beam fly through the air. That's kind of silly, but
Yeah.
whatever. That's
I
a
think
visual
Adam
thing.
Savage, when they were doing it on Mythbusters, said they were going something like 150 feet a second or something like that, which is not even as
Yeah,
fast as a bullet.
that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, you
Because
can't
they were
watch
trying to
bullets fly through the
say,
air.
you know, could you dodge out of the way of you know, stormtroopers shooting at you, and you know they were shooting each other with, I think, tennis balls or something that were made to go at that same speed, and no, they couldn't dodge. So
Yeah. Well,
I said
the
that didn't make
thing
any sense,
about
but
that I don't have as much of a problem with because the Force supposedly allows some level of foresight, and this is why the Jedi's can use the lightsaber to deflect the blasters because they have a second or so of foresight to see where the blaster's aiming before they pull the trigger and
Sure,
yeah,
can
but
move
like
yeah, but
their.
I mean, you even see it with like people like Han Solo, who doesn't have the
exactly what I was about to
Force.
say. Exactly what I was about to say. As a stormtrooper will shoot a blaster, and then Ansel will be like, "Oh, let me like duck behind like this corner, like take
Yeah.
cover."
And SKM is also mentioning plasma and laser weaponry. I think the one that probably did it best was Babylon 5, but even they have problems with the PPGs. I mean, it makes sense because you do have to reload it. You have the charge, which, you know, is what you use to create the plasma. You put it in and you activate it instead of, you know, cocking it. You know, it doesn't make click up. It goes and it's ready to fire, and then you can get so many shots out of it. I think the only real problem with that, and this may not even be that big a problem if you allow for 300 years of technology, but in one episode they said they were using superheated helium. And so the big problem is, where do you get the helium from? How do you compress that much helium into, you know, that tiny little charge they put in?
I think
So
my favorite, I don't know if it counts as a blaster, uh, but that type of weaponry comes from the Halo series. Because I could be wrong, but if I recall correctly, each gun has like a block of like some alien metal, and what happens when you pull the trigger is a mechanism ships off a tiny bit, and the way it propels it at like crazy speeds, and it may be tiny, but because it's going so fast, when it hits something, um it does a lot of damage. And because it's such a tiny bit that's shipped off from that basically block that's inside the gun, the ammunition is uh for all effects and purposes infinite. Of
yeah,
course, there's a lot of questions about that, like how exactly the mechanism works, but I can that's something I can at least see working.
yeah, but I mean, the purpose of it made sense because you don't want to shoot, you know, a regular gun on a space station in case you know, blow a hole in the hull. That can be a
Right.
problem. So, you know, the idea was you were sending out a little bolt of superheated helium that was made so hot that it was a plasma. And if it hit, you know, something soft, you know, like a person, then, you know, it would go through them and do damage. But if it hits the metal hull, it just doesn't do anything except maybe heat it up a little bit. And there are scenes where they use PPGs, you know, to like, you know, cut through a door or something like that, but they're using the PPG rifles. They're doing a bunch of them, and it takes a ton of shots for them to blast through it.
Maybe they should consider using swords. Well, I guess lightsabers are a kind of swords.
Yeah, they're basically swords, and I don't really understand why the Jedi turn their nose up at blasters.
Uh,
Because I mean, a ranged attack
maybe
has got to
because
be better.
maybe because they require less training or
Yeah,
something.
well, Luke carried a blaster, um, and he carried a blaster onto Cloud City. You see him sneaking around the corridors with the blaster.
Yeah, but if you look at Obi-Wan in the prequels, there was one that he actually took a blaster off of someone, after he beat him. He looked at it and said, like, so primitive or something, and then tossed it to the side.
Well, I guess he's going for an anti-gun message there.
I don't know. But it's like, okay, I get it.
It's
If
the
you have
Batman
if you
thing.
have a blaster, and you shoot it at a Jedi, they can deflect it with the lightsaber. Okay? If you have a 2-barreled blaster that shoots 2 bolts at one time, they can still deflect it. But if you make a 3-barreled blaster and the barrels are not all in a line, they make a triangle, and you shoot them, just by the basic geometry, he's only going to be able to deflect 2 of those bolts, and the third one's going to get through and kill him. I don't know why I'm the only one who thinks of these things.
Or
That's a
you
good
could
point.
at least deflect 2 and dodge the third. Try.
I'd like to use the Obi-Wan tossing away the blaster thing. That's like a Batman thing, where Batman never uses guns. Now that always got to me, because it's like, he didn't use guns because he had this moral principle that he never kills his adversaries, right? But you can use a gun to not kill an adversary, and there's a lot of cases
And
where
if
it would
he
come really handy.
If it throws one of his batarangs wrong, he can absolutely kill someone.
Yeah, he uses potentially lethal force all the time, but for some reason he has this thing about guns, and he could also.
Well,
carry
I think mostly,
pepper rounds.
I think mostly it was about, traditionally, what Batman was always about was stealth. And he was always about sneaking around and doing things that way. In these later movies, it's like all of a sudden his, suit is everything at the same time. It can fly, and it's also armor, and he can just, jump right out into a bunch of bad guys who are just, shooting him, and it's bouncing off of his armor, and apparently they never think to aim up and shoot for his mouth, which is completely unprotected. He's just storming in and doing all that instead of sneaking around with stealth, how he would traditionally do it.
Well, I think the thing with Batman is that, he's constantly watching the barrels of the guns, and is so evasive that they can't actually get a good shot at his mouth. One
They're
of
not
the
even
best
trying to aim for his mouth. They're aiming directly for his chest, where it never worked the last 7 times they fired.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Under the Red Hood?
I have not.
That's probably one of the best animated Batman movies out there. But if nobody's ever seen it, I guess this is a dead end in our conversation.
Yeah, we come across those a lot.
There was my favorite Joker gag was, you had Batgirl fighting the Joker, and she knocks him back onto this table, and starts wailing on him, and on the table is this knife that was being used to cut this slab of bologna. Right, and you see him reach over like he's gonna grab the knife, but he grabs the bologna and whacks him with the bologna. That was probably the best Joker gag I've ever seen. Batman's one of the better superhero concepts. I like that his only superpower is that he's incredibly smart, and for the most part, the way that they write his character is pretty intelligent.
Yeah,
Usually
they do the same thing. They do the same thing over in the Marvelverse. They do the same thing over in the Marvelverse with Tony Stark. He doesn't have any superpowers. I mean, I guess you could say he has power from the device that, keeps his heart going, because without it, I forget why that one shard would end up killing whatever it is, but still, that's technology. He's not a super. He doesn't have powers. He's just really smart.
Hey.
Hey, exec.
Hey.
How you doing?
Hello.
It's
Exactly.
Fat Albert. Oh,
Have you
cancel
seen
culture.
have you
Hey,
seen
hey,
Batman Under the
hey.
Red Hood? Have you seen Batman Under the Red Hood? Exactly.
Uh, I have not seen it, but I've heard good things.
It's very good. Yeah, I was hoping somebody else had seen it, and oh well. Yeah, it's pretty good. I
I
love showing it
haven't.
to my kids, even though it's like PG-13, is I would say in terms of violence and stuff. But
Well, I mean, I was watching rated R films when I was 7 years old, so
Yeah.
I turned out pretty good.
yeah,
My parents, they would just
Yeah,
say, "Don't
most of
do the
those movie
swears."
ratings are junk anyway. They're complete garbage.
My
Yeah.
parents, they would just say, "Oh, don't swear or don't say those." Meanwhile, it's I Am Legend, and Will Smith is shooting a bunch of vampires and shit, and it's like, well, I guess that's anecdotal proof that violent films don't cause violence.
Isn't it interesting though that they'll allow so much violence and death and blood and gore in movies and won't allow all that much in the way of sex. So two people
It's
loving each other is worse than two people killing each other. That never made any
it's funny
sense to
because
me.
they did a study where they looked at PG-13 films, and they found that they have more violence, they have more shootings, they have more overall violence than rated R films. It's just rated R films say
Hmm.
the F word more than twice.
Yep.
well, you know,
They say dirty words, they
I'll,
show some boobies, yeah, and we can't have that.
You're only allowed to
yeah,
say the F word once in a PG-13 movie.
yeah,
Mm.
I don't think boobs should be censored at all, and I think censoring profanity is
It
stupid.
doesn't make
I will
it doesn't
say,
make any sense. It's like, okay, well, why shouldn't why shouldn't you show boobs on TV? And they'll always say, well, the children shouldn't see boobs. It's like, do you have any idea how
younger
kids spend the
children
first year of their lives?
or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
They,
I will say
well,
about sex though is that the consequences and the ramifications of sex are less apparent than the ramifications of violence, and so I think kids are less prone to deal with exposure to sexual themes in an appropriate way
I
than
mean,
they
it
would be to
depends on the
violence.
context. It
Yeah.
depends on the context of the scene too. If it's a
Is
rape scene,
Absolutely,
then
is that but
obviously the kid is being
is that a self-fulfilling prophecy? Is that the case because they have more opportunities to watch violence on TV than they do to watch sex on TV?
maybe.
when I
Well, it
was
all depends on how it's portrayed. Yes.
I did a course, I think it's at Coursier, like Yale was offering like a psychology course, and they went into the psychology of children, and it's kids do have from birth, not a not as clear, but a innate sense of right and wrong to some extent. And if they
Hmm.
did a study where they did like, I think it was like a bad puppet and a good puppet, and they acted out a story, and the kids tended to go towards the good puppet and see the bad puppet as bad. I mean, like, evolutionarily it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I know my daughter, when she was 5, it was like one of the local stations was syndicating Stargate SG-1, and she watched it like every day. But I remember she asked me one time, says, Daddy, those are good guys, so why do they have guns? And so that was the opportunity for me to give to her the spiel from Shane, my namesake, about how a gun is just a tool, no better or no worse than the persons can use it. Good guys can use guns, bad guys can use guns. So it was always an opportunity for having that conversation and, letting her know what was going on. And there were plenty of, and she always had, a good idea of the difference between reality and fantasy. Yeah. But
Yeah, and when I was a kid, when I was a kid, I used to watch classic war films like Full Metal Jacket, all that stuff, and I would go to school and I would talk about the plots and stuff like that, and the teachers would make a big deal out of it, and and they thought I was going to be this violent individual. And it's like, no, it's a movie. I
Yeah.
appreciate the story of this. I can watch Scarface or The Godfather, and even though it's violent and has all that stuff, I appreciate the story. It doesn't mean I'm going to become a Hispanic Coke dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, and
important
that's
to
why I
show-
don't believe for 1 second this idea that, oh, you know, porn is screwing up everyone's ideas towards sex, and when they have sex with someone, they're going to think it's like it's in a porn film. Why would that be the case any more than, you know, it's just like the same thing. Oh, watching a violent movie makes you violent. No, it doesn't. Same thing.
Or it's like reading romantic novels or something like that. Back then it was dime novels.
Yeah. They would give you an unrealistic, you know, idea of how relationships are, but, you know.
You learn the hard way, though. That's the
Yeah.
thing about relationships.
That's the way it's been since, you know, for thousands of years.
Well, the problems can arise when the hard way doesn't just hurt you, it hurts the other person.
Yeah, but I mean that's life.
Yeah, but what are the chances that somebody I understand that, but it's just I don't really think somebody's gonna learn the hard way and actively hurt somebody. I think it might be accidental, but I I don't know. I don't see a kid watching like not a kid, but like a teenager watching whatever in like their first encounter with a girl or guy, whatever. I don't see them sexually assaulting somebody. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, no,
I
but
can
I
see
can
an
totally
accidental
see
pregnancy,
I
but
can
yeah.
totally see a teenager not understanding that somebody younger than them will think of them as an authority figure, and then they don't realize that they're putting this pressure on that other person to put out, and then that can get really messy really quick.
But again, that's always
Uh,
been the case.
question, since we're kind of half on the topic. Uh, oh, what was that kid that just shot a couple people in school recently?
Ethan
Yeah,
Crumley.
someone earlier was talking about that in Michigan.
Uh,
I don't
do we
remember if that
know
was before we went live or not, but yeah, someone brought
do
that
we
up.
know what his motivation was for doing that?
I think
I
he was
don't know.
getting bullied or he was just not right in the head. I don't know.
Hmm.
No, it
'Cause
seems to be rare
I
that you can
know that
actually figure out what was going on in their heads.
I know that he had like been
Yeah.
shooting with his parents at a
Sorry,
range.
notification.
Now a lot of people are saying that oh, it's because like because it was like shooting with a gun and all that 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 he then did this so
Well,
having
what they
having access
also
to a gun was evil or something.
what they also tried to blame Ethan's motivation on was there's a game called Fallout 4, and he posted a death threat previously before that whole thing went down that it was a quote from Hindu scripture, and it was "I have become death, destroyer of worlds." And the New York Times tried blaming it on this video game Fallout 4, where somebody says "I have become death, destroyer of worlds," but they don't realize that that's an ancient Hindu scripture line, and Oppenheimer said that after
Yep.
the atomic bomb. So
Yeah, he
they
said
tried
that about the atomic
blaming.
bomb. Yeah, and that's where most people know that. Because I think the Hindu quote is actually, "Now I am become Shiva, destroyer of worlds," because they have the different gods and they turn into other gods. And
Yeah,
it's all about going through the cycles in Hinduism.
Hmm.
yeah, that's the one
Okay, so
thing I learned in
SKM says if anyone says that if they watch something and acts on it, they're really dumb or psychopathic. I don't know, SKM, are you talking about the people who would act on it or the people who would say that other people would act on it? like a confession through projection thing.
Are we talking like Catcher in the Rye, the Beatles situation here, or? Because they tried blaming Catcher in the Rye on the guy who shot John Lennon.
Yeah.
What won't people blame?
Well, something like that happens and your mind casts around for a reason. The problem is you have people who'll just, latch on to the first reason that comes to them, and they'll just go thinking that that's just the way it is because of it. And instead of saying, well, that's an interesting idea, maybe we should find out, if there's any reason to believe that's it and let's gather evidence. They don't do that. It's just like, okay, that solves it. And now, my mind is, no longer in distress because I now have this answer. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who commit extreme acts of violence, they have this natural, well, innate kind of desire to commit some extreme act of violence, and then they find some way to justify it in their own head and then act then.
Well,
And
there's a
I think it has
difference.
less to do with their ideology and more to do with just them as a person.
Well, there's a difference between a thought uh, or an urge, and there's a difference between acting on that. I mean, most sociopaths, I would say, go on to actually control the urges and whatever. Like, wait, I'm thinking psychopath, but uh, majority of people who have urges like that, they keep it in check. But some people, they just, you're right, they find a reason.
And Isaac Clarke says Rittenhouse's prosecutor is keeping on coping in their leftist echo chambers, just digging a deeper and deeper hole for his career. Yeah, I have no idea why he's still going after Dominic Black, because they admitted in court that the exceptions in the law applied, to Kyle Rittenhouse. It was not, a short-barreled rifle, so it was legal for him to have, and therefore, according to that same clause, it was legal for Dominic Black to give it to him. So if that's already been settled in court as a matter of law, then why is he still going after Dominic Black?
Well, the problem is what's
BLM.
called the problem is it, and this is weird about firearms law, is if you give money for someone to buy you a firearm, that is illegal. From
But that's
what
not
I've
what
heard.
happened. That's not what happened.
No,
What
no,
happened
you
was,
can actually you can buy a firearm for somebody else if they're legally allowed to have it.
yeah,
Because
and
you
that's
can
what
transfer
the law
firearms.
says. The law says that he can transfer the firearm to Kyle Rittenhouse, and that was done with the understanding that when
thought
Kyle,
I thought Rittenhouse had given the money towards the gun to Dominic and
no,
he bought it.
he was going to do that when he turned 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Dominic Black bought
Well,
the
I guess
gun
I was
with the
lied to.
understanding that Kyle would buy it from him when he turned 18 and then was legally allowed to purchase it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that it would make a difference.
I'm not sure it would either.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to give someone.
Well, I mean, it is
it's
illegal. It is illegal for Kyle to have purchased the gun before he was 18. So I guess if he had given Dominic Black the money at that time, then they could have got him on that. But I mean, he said, on the stand, he wasn't going to do that because he knew he wasn't allowed to until he was 18. And so it was just done with that understanding.
Very weird because when I was in Massachusetts, I had to get a firearms license to buy a long gun, and with that, you have to go through a safety course and all that. And the age to get it is, I believe, 14 with parents' permission and 16 without. And basically, if you have the card and you're 16, you're able to purchase that firearm, I believe, on your own. It's a weird thing, that law, but I believe you need like a letter signed by your parents that says he can have that, yada yada yada. But Massachusetts just has weird firearms laws to begin with.
Yeah, I mean that's a totally different law than Wisconsin. So.
Because federally, it's 18 with exceptions to transfer a firearm. Like, it's for handgun, the age is 21 to buy it from an FFL, but if a parent wanted to give their child a handgun uh, who was 18, then there are exceptions there. And there are also exceptions for under 18, but I believe you have to be supervised as well. So,
But that's also why the firearm had to stay in Wisconsin, because he was
yeah.
going to apply for the license from the state of Illinois to have the gun. And if he had done that, then, if he had managed to get that through and, none of the rest of that would have happened and he got that through, then he would have been able to take the gun with him into Illinois. But that didn't happen because guess what? They were just dragging their feet on it for months and months and months, and then, the shooting happened and so they denied him on that basis. So
Yeah. The strange part about Massachusetts firearms law is if you want to own a long gun, that's fine with an FID card, but you're limited to only 10 rounds. So if you want to go above that, and you have to have pre 1994 magazines, because 1994 is when the assault weapons ban happened and Massachusetts adopted their law uh, similar during that time. You have to have a license to carry a pistol to have 30 round mags.
Not much longer.
yeah, I mean, the gun laws, especially in places like Massachusetts and California, they are so screwy.
Yeah, if you go to somewhere like Roxbury or Boston, they are seizing firearms on the daily from criminals, and they don't care about the laws. They
Mhm.
have more than 10 rounds, and that's illegal. But hey, gun laws don't work. That's why I moved out of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
credit where credit is due to certain police departments and stuff, because a lot of these bad gun laws just don't even go enforced. I know in the state of Colorado where I live, you can, in a lot of places, commercial gun stores, you can go in and they will sell you often uh, magazines with capacities exceeding the 15 round limit that is on the books. But almost any jurisdiction will not enforce that law. So they will openly sell them in the gun stores, even though they're technically illegal.
Yeah, Isaac, that was another dumb Binger moment. Well, he only said a little fire. Well, little fires turn into big fires.
I
Right.
only threw a Molotov cocktail at a gas station. What could happen?
Yeah.
I know in my
They,
state,
you see,
in my
all he
state,
did was light a dumpster on a fire and push it towards a gas station. Nothing bad could possibly have come from that.
All
yeah,
he
in
did
my
was
state,
smoke
they
a cigarette
actually,
while pumping his gas.
in Colorado, they actually specified that arson as one of the examples of being able to use lethal force to
Yeah.
prevent.
In Maine, I
And
think it's limited to robbery, murder, kidnapping, and another thing, but
But
it's
arson
weird.
can kill a lot of people. You want to talk about they can talk about like mass shootings that kill, 10, 15 people or whatever. Arson can kill hundreds.
yeah, the largest
Yeah,
mass
you had
killing
a
in the United States prior to the Oklahoma City bombing was an arsonist, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
there was a thing in Massachusetts. They had a lot of people use this as a case of regulation, like, but whatever. I don't. But there was this feeder, and it had fake palm trees, and what happened was there was lighting right next to these flammable palm tree type things, and the whole thing caught on fire. It was a feeder, and what happened was the doors opened from a different way, so everybody was trying to open the door, but it wouldn't go because you have to open it inwards. So I think 80 people ended up dying from that. So if somebody did that on purpose, well, you
Yeah.
just killed 80 people and you didn't even need a gun or a knife.
Yep. It can be really bad. Well, we've gone 10 minutes over, and it's been good. It's been great, but we
All
need to
right.
get our final thoughts and wrap it up. So, anyone have anything else you just want to get out?
I can't think of anything.
I did
So
send you a Discord message about. I've noticed that people will often go stupid when they when they defend uh like what did I yeah, I also I debated like a flat or I pointed out some nuance in a flat earther debunkers video, and then people attacked me because and they lost their minds because I said that actually the sun does move at different rates across the sky depending on the time of the year because the
Mm-hmm.
its declination changes. Yeah,
Well, and also
it's
you've
amazing.
got some weirdness with orbital mechanics because of the tidal shifts caused by Earth's elliptical orbit. So when Earth is nearer the sun, it's going to have little weird effects like that. So yeah, it's
And the
going to
tides
vary.
go in.
Yeah,
I guess when I was thinking about time zones, I was thinking if North Carolina say decided that we're not going to switch back to standard time, so you can't really stay on daylight time, but you can switch for Atlantic time. What would be better? And I was wondering when, and I knew it would vary because we're a pretty wide state, but I was thinking like, okay, when actually is proper noon in North Carolina when the sun, is directly overhead? And it turns out not only does it vary, as to, what part of the state you're in, which I figured, it can actually vary by as much as 20 minutes over the course of the year. So like where I am, it's anywhere between like 12:25 and 12:50 or something like that. Just depending on what time
yeah,
of the
that
year
probably
is.
has to
That's
do with
when noon is.
during the winter, the Earth is moving fastest
Mm-hmm.
than during the summer, where it's further out in the
Right.
orbit. So it'll
Yeah.
shift a little. So your
Is
days
that
are going
Kepler's
to
second
lag.
law or third law? It's one of Kepler's laws that says that.
Second law.
Second law.
That's probably more related to the second law, which says that there's a constant sweep
Yeah.
in
It
the
sweeps out
area
equal
of the
areas and
wedge.
equal times. Yeah.
Right, right. So it's further from the sun, so it won't move as quickly. So the angle of the sun changes less during the summer from day to day, and so it would start to lag earlier and earlier in the day. You would get solar, or is it later in the day? You'd get solar and then whatever, um, as compared to the winter. So yeah, that's interesting. I guess it would vary by about 1% per year or per day.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tide
it
goes
ends up
in, tide
being
goes out.
something like 20 minutes. Overall, most of the state is actually closer to Atlantic time than Eastern time anyway. So it would make sense, but it just kind of surprised me that it could vary that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else
Tide
before
goes
we
in, tide tide goes in, tide goes out. You can't
You
explain
can't
that.
explain that.
you can't explain that. You ever heard of the moon? That was the inspiration for that was the inspiration for the Idiot Extraordinaire segment in Bogosity. That happened, a couple of months before I started the podcast, but it's like, you know what? I need something for just when someone says something dumb like that. So that segment is because of Bill O'Reilly.
speaking of
Somebody recently told me that an
idiot
infinite
extraordinaire,
universe is impossible.
Well, what do you mean by infinite?
As in, it's infinite, like not just the observable universe, just that
I mean,
there
if
is no edge to the.
well,
You mean like
boundless
Yeah,
is one idea of how it could be infinite.
and
But
that
if
we
you're
ca- and
talking
that
about if you're talking about the if you're going to
that
say there's infinite matter and energy in the universe, you're going to have problems. So it just all depends on what you mean.
no. It could be that if you could travel faster than the speed of light and zoom to the edge of the universe, it would probably still look just like this continuous the
Yeah.
universe we're looking at now. There's probably still matter and energy, no matter how far away from the Earth you get, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And probably at
maybe
some
not.
point, you would wrap back around and run into the Earth if you go fast enough,
Well,
faster than the
that
expansion.
that would be the possibility that of a finite universe. But what I'm saying is that
Well,
they
it's
were
it's
saying that
finite,
it's impossible.
finite but unbounded is what that
Yeah.
is.
Like if the universe is this crystal lattice of matter and energy, then that would be different. Because I was making the argument that no matter what arrangement of matter, that Earth-like intelligence exists an infinite number of times if the universe is infinite. And their response was, it's impossible for the universe to be infinite. No, it's not impossible. There's no reason to believe
Hmm.
that that's an impossible model to exist.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, we could imagine that there are infinite universes out there and all that. I don't know.
That doesn't even posit other universes. That would just be this universe just very, very far away, outside of the
Yeah.
observable bubble that we have.
Hmm. Interesting.
Isaac says time is not a dimension, it's our observation of chance. Yeah, there are formulations of quantum mechanics that do not have time.
Oh, there we go into quantum mechanics again.
Yeah. It was bound to happen sooner or later, but we got to sign off. So thanks so much.
No, time is non-existent. It wasn't bound to happen sooner or later. It's happening now.
Everything is happening now. Everything that ever happened or ever will happen is happening now, including signing off of this live stream. So really glad you could make it, Tia. It's been a while since we had you on. We had Pip earlier on. We had Darth Fenrir. And thanks Forth and thanks Executioner for joining. I'm trying to remember. Did we have anyone else on?
Fourth Root was
she is
here.
Fourth is still here.
Pip's
I'm
was
still
here
here
for a while. Did you mention him?
Yeah, Pip. Yeah, I got Pip. And we had super chats from Xerius the 11th or Kyrus. I don't know if that's supposed to be Greek or Latin. And Darius Thurman gave a couple of super chats. And of course, we had all sorts of great people in the chats giving us some. Even though I wasn't able to read out every single one of them, I appreciate all the chats. I appreciate all the views. Thank you so very much, everyone. Until next time, stay strong.